Welcome to my channel, Mukesh's Tech Space. First of all, I'd like to apologize for not posting a video in about a couple of months. I've been busy with other things and just hadn't had the chance to create videos. Second of all, I'd like to thank everyone that has liked my videos, posted comments, and also provided some suggestions. So thank you all for that, and I'm glad the videos are coming are being useful for you guys. Some of the suggestions, or one of the suggestions, was about using the new service that AWS Lightsail has launched, which is the database service. With that service now, along with the load balancing capabilities that Lightsail had, we can now build a load balanced WordPress site. So my three-part video series will be about setting up WordPress in a load balanced system. You'll ask, why do I need a load balanced, or why do I need this setup? Well, a couple of reasons. One is load balancing, which really just means is that you're balancing the load between one or more, or two or more instances of your website. So you'll have one website in, let's say, our East region, and you'll set up a second website, a mirror copy of it, on a West region. Now, if you set up those sites today, they would likely have two different URLs. If you updated one, how would you update the second one? So you wouldn't really have a true mirror copy after you make a couple of updates. What a load balancer does is that it stands in front of your websites, two different websites, and starts to direct traffic based on load. Or even based on where the user is coming from. If they're coming from, let's say, the western side of the US, then they would go to the West region. If they're coming from the eastern part, then they would go to the East region. So if your WordPress site or a post goes viral, you'll be able to handle that load instead of just one server taking up the responsibility for serving out your website. You'd have two servers or more that can handle the load. The second reason is for high availability. This would mean that, let's say, one side of, let's say you're East, and you have a website in your East region and your West region, and for some reason AWS East region goes offline or has connectivity issues or is down for whatever reason, then your website is still serving pages to your customers because your West region is still up, or vice versa. If the West is down, then the East will start serving all the customers. So your website would virtually never go down in this setup. So that's what I'm going to start as a three-part video tutorial to show you how to set it up for your WordPress site. So without further ado, let's get started. As I mentioned in the intro, this will be a multi-video tutorial. In this video, we'll create and configure an S3 bucket. We'll create a user in AWS. We'll give that user access to the S3 bucket. We'll come back into Lightsail and create our WordPress instance, and we'll add the plugin that will help us connect the WordPress instance to the S3 bucket and allow us to store media library items into S3. So let's get started. First, we'll go ahead and so right now I'm on my AWS Lightsail dashboard. For me, I can just click on AWS. That'll take me to the AWS console. Otherwise, if you are not in your Lightsail dashboard, you could just go to aws.amazon.com and sign in. If you haven't created an account here, go ahead and first create an account, set up your billing, and other information that AWS requires. And that, once you're done, you should be able to view your AWS management console. So the first thing, create an S3 bucket. So we'll go to the S3 management console, click on create bucket, and we're going to give our bucket a name. I'm going to name it my WP Media 2018, and I'll keep the region default, US East to Ohio. Click on next. Okay, well, bucket name already exists, so we're going to have to give it another unique name. And keep in mind, even though, as you'll see here, I don't have any buckets, but even then it tells me that the media, the name already exists. In the S3 world, a bucket name has to be unique across all of S3, across all of user accounts. So even though I'm not using this name, somebody out there is using this name. So you'll want to keep it you'll have to keep it very unique. So let me just add a YT in front of that for YouTube, and let's see if that's taken. It's not, so we're good to go. On this screen, I believe we should be able to just keep all these as default. Management, okay. And then, okay, on this screen, we're going to make some changes. This is a pretty new screen. I'm not sure when this got introduced, but it's a new screen for me as well. But here, we're going to have to turn off some of these items. Majority of the time, people use S3 to access and store private information. And so by default, S3 is always locked down. What we have to do, though, is we're using S3 for a public folder or public storage that can be accessed by anyone on the internet. Because if you write a blog post and you put some images on your blog post, those images will come to S3. But then when someone visits your blog post, you still want them to see that those images on that post. So we need to have it completely public. So for that, we're going to actually turn off these blocking settings, even though it says recommended here. We're going to turn it off. Go ahead and click next, and then create your bucket. So we have our bucket created. There are a few things on here that we're going to need to do to, again, configure the S3 bucket to be public, and also create a user, then give that user access to this S3 bucket. So first thing is we'll click on our bucket. We're going to go to permissions, and we're going to assign it a bucket policy. So here we have to write a policy script. I already have one ready to go, so I'm just going to copy that and paste it here, and also provide this at the in my video description, so you can copy and use it. The only thing is, when you do copy it, you'll have to change a few things. On this script, you'll have to change the bucket name. So whatever you named your bucket, I'm going to have to make a slight change as well, as we decided to put YT in our bucket name, and then click save. Okay, so now it also, again, by default, S3 is always a lockdown storage system. So it's always going to warn you about public access. So here again, this bucket has public access. We actually want that, so you can just ignore that warning. The next step will be to create a user. So now you'll go back to your AWS Management Console, and you're going to find the IAM service. Now, just to mention, give you a note, in the AWS Management Console, right now here it says recently visited services, and they're up there, so I can quickly go here to IAM. If you're here visiting the first time, you may not see those, so you're gonna actually have to go through all of these services. So for S3, it's in the storage category, so you can click on S3. For the IAM, it's going to be under security, identity, and compliance. So you'll click on IAM from here. Another shortcut to get to different services in the AWS console is click on services here, and then you can see the ones that you visited recently, or always find your service from here. All right, so let's go ahead and go to users. Click on users, and then hit add user. So here we're going to create a user for our system, and I'm going to try to name it the same, and let's see what it does. My WP Media YT 2018, and maybe I'll put underscore user at the end. Next, we're going to give it programmatic access. Click on next for permissions. And here we're going to attach policy. Policies are That's the terminology AWS uses for basically permissions or any kind of scripting that modifies the behavior of their service. So we're going to attach a policy. We're going to create a policy, and that will open up a new window and allow us to create a policy. We can use this visual editor. Again, this is something new. I'm not very familiar with it, but I am familiar with this side. This has been existing. Again, our chance to write a script to modify the behavior or permissions of our user. So there's a policy, and I'm going to copy it again from my notes, and we'll paste it here. And again, I'll put this down in the video description so you can copy it. Once you do copy it, you'll have to modify a couple of items here. The bucket name, you put your bucket name, and I will modify my bucket name to include the YT. And we'll hit review policy. Here we'll get a chance to give our policy a name. So we'll say WP for WordPress S3 access policy. And you can provide a description if you want to. And we will create the policy. And we're done. WP S3 access policy has been created. We can go ahead and close this window. And on our previous window where we were setting up the user, let's refresh the list of policies and let's search. My WP, what did I name it? Just had it. WP, oh, there we go. Okay. So WP access, select that, hit next. We can provide it tags. I never do. And then we'll create the user. And that's it. Now, on this screen, very important because you don't get to see it again, is you'll need to copy the access key, and you'll also need to copy down the secret access key. And there's also a convenient download that in a CSV format, so I suggest you do that just so you don't lose it. And then we'll need this on our WordPress side to configure the plugin so that the plugin can access the S3 bucket using this user's access key and secret access key. So here I'm going to pause the video so I get a chance to copy it down, and I'll come back, and that's when we'll start setting up the WordPress in Lightsail. So I'll be right back. Okay, I have copied the access key and the secret access key and saved them into my notes. We'll need those to configure the WordPress plugin so that it can connect to our S3 bucket that we just created. So our next step here is to create our WordPress site. This tutorial completely follows the route that you're setting up a brand new website. For those of us that have an existing website and you want to enable this on your existing website, pretty much you'll follow the same steps. There are a couple of differences that I'll try to point out. If I don't, then just let me know in the comments and I'll try to answer them as best as I can for existing websites. But this tutorial completely assumes that you don't have a website and you're setting one up now. Or if you already have a website, you can still follow this tutorial and then migrate your content over to this instance and point your domain to this instance. So essentially you're just migrating to a brand new instance of WordPress, your existing site. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and create our WordPress instance. So within Lightsail, we'll create an instance. I'm going to leave the availability zone and region the same for our test purposes. I'm going to select the platform, which is Linux, Unix. So on this screen, let me talk about if we were using a app and server management service like a RunCloud, and you can look at my previous videos on how to set up RunCloud and Lightsail. If we were using the RunCloud service, then I would have selected OS only and then pick one of these two Ubuntu flavors. And then we would set up the WordPress using RunCloud. But for our tutorial here, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go here and select a apps and OS image, and I'm going to pick WordPress. And down here, we'll pick the cheapest option because this is just a test instance. I'm just going to blow it away once I'm done with the video tutorial. And the first month is free. So we'll go ahead and give, you know what, I'll probably leave it the same. Create the instance. Perfect. While that's going, I'm going to go ahead and attach a static IP address to this instance. And I believe I already have one. So let me go ahead and manage that. I gotta wait for that instance to be created before I can see it here. So give it a few seconds and I'll come back when it's ready to go. All right, my WordPress instance is ready to go. I'm going to go into networking. I already have an IP address as I mentioned. Click on manage. And now my IP address, I can select the instance I want to attach it to. Go ahead and hit attach. Perfect. Okay, so now we have a WordPress instance. We've created a static IP address. Now we'll need to point a domain name to this WordPress instance. I'm just going to use a temporary one. I've shown how to do that before in one of my previous tutorial videos. I use name.com as my registrar. I register all my domains through name.com. It's probably one of the best ones out there. I've used several, including the popular one, Network Solutions, GoDaddy, several others over the years, and name.com seems to be the most easiest and flexible. Prices, I guess, you could probably get something cheaper somewhere, but otherwise the service is great. So my domains are on name.com. I'm going to create one and I'll point that to this WordPress instance. Again, if you need to know how to do that, you can go ahead and go to one of my previous videos. All right, so I've configured a test domain to point to this WordPress instance. I've decided to use wp.mukesh.me, and there we go. My WordPress instance will go to wp admin, user, password, so you'll log in as administrator, and we'll go ahead and install the plugin that we'll need for S3. Go ahead and click add new. I'm going to search for it, search by the keyword offload, and it should be this second one here, but always just search for it and you'll see this plugin. It's by Delicious Brains, WP Offload Media Lite for AWS S3 and DigitalOcean. So we'll use that one. There are several others. Obviously, you can search by S3 and you'll see plenty of plugins. There's a plugin by there's also a plugin called, it's a cache plugin, WP Total Cache. You can use that plugin as well. It has a CDN support so that you can actually offload your images onto S3. And there's several other plugins. The one that we'll use here is this one. I've used it before. I've tested with it before, so I know how it works. But if you search by S3, you'll find a lot of them, and you can pick the one that suits you. It looks like the plugin's installed. Click on activate. That gives us right here. Now, the next thing we have to do is actually, if you remember, our access key and our secret access key. We have to actually save those and configure those so that we can use this plugin. The way this plugin works is that we have to modify our website's wp-config.php file, and we'll store those credentials in that file and then save it. Let me show you what we need to do, and then I'll again have to pause it so I can save those for my file, and then I'll come back. So there's a couple of ways you can modify a PHP file in WordPress or in a WordPress instance. Let me see if the editor still works. I know they've shut that down previously. Actually, you know what? I don't think this ever worked. You can't modify the WP config through here. So a couple of ways is, one is you can FTP into your server, download that file on your local computer, modify it, and then upload it back. A second route is you can actually log into the server directly using SSH and modify the file on the server directly. And that's usually the route I kind of prefer. So click on our little icon here that opens up an SSH instance. Again, I've shown how to configure a SSH instance using a client, a software that you download on your computer in one of my previous tutorials. So you can take a look at those to help you configure that if you wish to. But I'm just logging into the console web using the web SSH feature in Lightsail. Here we are. Go to our apps. Go to WordPress, and we need to go to our doc root or our www root or our public folder for our website, and that's htdocs. And let's see, thought it was ht. Oh, misspelled it. And here we are, and these are the files that will look familiar to you. So the file we're going to modify is wp-config.php. So let's open it. I'm using the VI editor. Here we go. And we'll scroll down to this can go pretty much, the code can go pretty much anywhere. I'm just going to decide to put it right at the bottom, right after our WP debug flag. So the code that we need to add, and I'm going to copy it from my notes again, and we'll add it right here. Paste. Oh, that's right. You got to paste it in a special way. There we go, paste. So as you see here, we have one line that provides the access key, and the next line that will provide the secret access key. So you'll just copy these two lines. Again, I'll put those that code down in our notes below, and you can just copy it, paste it in here, and then you just take your access key that you downloaded earlier, and you take your secret access key that you downloaded earlier and paste these in here and save the file. That's what I'm going to do. So once I'm finished with that, I'll start the video back up again. All right. Well, I've applied my settings, and I've just come back into my WordPress area, and then the plugin that was activated, Offload Media, it's available under Settings. Click on Offload Media. So we'll add our bucket name, which was my WP Media YT 2018. Save, and there we go. Copy files to the bucket. We want to do that. By default, the path is the same as your local WordPress files. Year, month, versioning, turn it on. Rewriting, URL rewriting, basically it will say is that all the local files will start using the URLs for the S3 bucket. And then force HTTPS if you're on an SSL, HTTPS based site if you have an SSL. And then if you do a custom CNAME for your bucket, we'll turn some of these off. There's some advanced options here. Remove files from the server. So once a file has been copied to the bucket, remove it from the server. I would go ahead and do that. Although it does say some plugins depend on the file being present on your local server and may not work when it is removed. If that's the case, turn it off if it doesn't work for you. But we'll leave it on here. They do have a paid plugin, and some of the options here will be the one that is pretty cool is it saves directly to the S3 bucket. It doesn't save it on your local media library and then move the file or copy the file over. There's a much nicer integration if you go to the paid model. And then they have some other e-commerce or WooCommerce and easy digital download integration. If your site uses that, then probably is a good idea to upgrade. Okay, well, let's see. We are all set. Now to test it, let's go ahead and go to our, oh, we forgot to save. Good option. Let's hit save. Okay, now let's go to media and let's add an image. Let's see. I need to find an image. So give me a second while I find some images to upload. All right. Found a couple of images. Just went online and downloaded a couple of them that I could use for testing purposes. Let's go ahead and drag the first one over. And here we go. We'll also drag the second one over. And here we go. So now these are stored on our media library. And then once they're copied, they should be also available on your S3 bucket. So let's go check out our S3 bucket. S3. Okay, here's our bucket. Here we go. WP content, uploads, 2018. And here are the one file that I just uploaded and the other file that we just uploaded. So there we go. So now that's our site is now using the S3 system for storing media files. So if we were to create a quick post, add a new post, test, and then select the media, insert this one, and then publish. Then if we go and view that post, you'll see here, if we look at the image, so copy the image address, and let's paste it in a new browser window. As you'll see here, it's going to S3 US East to Amazon AWS.com. So it's actually loading into S3, into our bucket, and then that path that we just saw a little while ago. So that means your images are now not coming from the local server. They're actually being fetched from Amazon. Okay, so next, what are we going to do next? Next couple of videos will be around setting up our database so that our database is actually on a different system than the actual server. And we'll then make a snapshot of our WordPress instance. And finally, we'll set up our load balancer. And so there's a couple of more videos that we'll have to finish this entire tutorial series off. So I hope you found that video useful. If you did, give me a comment down below, like my video, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel, go ahead and subscribe, and also click on that bell icon that lets you know when I post more videos. Keep an eye out for the next two videos, and until then, thanks for watching.